Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. We've got our friend Super Dave Harrington on again today. I only think I have one friend who's got super in front of their name. How'd you get that name?
I earned it, bro.
That's it. Just like it could have been like.
Well, I mean, it was given to me, but I earned it. You know, you can't give yourself a code name, dude. Doesn't work like that. You have to inadvertently do something to earn it, or it's given to you out of respect. But I used to do a lot of super stuff, man.
Did that come when you were in the teams or from like the shooting sports stuff?
Back in a combination of the two.
Okay. All right. So we've had you on before. Some folks that are like the younger crowd, this is something you and I have been talking about. Don't know some of you dudes that haven't spent the time building like followings online. So brief background of Super Dave Harrington. Who's Dave?
I had an eclectic military career. My father was career Navy, so I was raised a Navy brat. I initially went into the Navy Seabees. I was a heavy equipment mechanic. That's where I captured my initial critical thinking skills, and got way off into hydraulics and stuff like that, worked on heavy equipment. As a matter of fact, I think we had just rolled up Grenada.
What was that, like 1980, 81?
83. October 83-ish.
Okay.
And so, the Army Special Forces had a program at the time where you could enlist right off the street for SF. I believe they called it the SF baby system or whatever. But I missed out on that because I opted to take the law enforcement option, and I went into the Air Force as a security specialist. And my only saving grace there was I was an active reservist. I still went to the academy at Lackland Air Force Base and blah, blah, blah. But I worked out of Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. But we did all of our drills and training cycles at Hurlburt Spec Ops Airfield, which is part of Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. But dig this. It didn't take me long to switch on to the simple fact that I wasn't going to spend my youth counting rivets on aircraft. Not going to happen. So I negotiated an inter-service transfer from the Air Force to the Army, but by that time my options were limited. So basically I had to go, infantry, airborne, ranger, special forces, blah, 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 that kind of a deal. But it just worked out, man. Things fell into place by the numbers. I was afforded opportunities because I earned them. Nobody, it's not the environment where you get freebies. Nothing's given. And, 23 years later, it was all over. I punched out. I opted to, I had, right at the end of my career, I was promoted to Master Sergeant, but I didn't accept the promotion. I turned it down because I would have had to extend 2 years, provided I accepted the promotion. Well, that wasn't the case because I had already submitted my retirement paperwork, and the plan was to make $1,200 a day as a security contractor on board with Triple Canopy in the 04 time frame. Well, all that came to fruition, and I wound up getting in country, but my neck blew up on me. I was losing the use of my right hand, and right arm to an extent, nerve involvement, blah, blah, blah. What it was all the C-spine discs were herniated and pinching off my spinal cord. So basically, you know, they told me point blank, triple canopy handled the circumstances extremely well. They just told me, they wouldn't tell me what was wrong with me, so to speak. I guess they didn't want me to be overly concerned. But they just told me point blank, you need medical attention, serious medical attention that you are not going to get over here, dude. You know, you need to go home and get worked on. As it turned out, 2 weeks to the day I got back, I was on the table for 9.5 hours.
Wow.
ICU for a week and out of action for 2 years.
That's crazy.
It was, at the very least, a significant emotional event.
Yeah.
I went from running around the world with my hair on fire to an absolute dead stop. A very painful one at that.
That was
But,
04?
Correct. April of 04, I had that done. But the funny thing about it is, it couldn't have gone better. The surgery was a complete success. If you were to watch me, you know, shoot a course of fire, or do some wacky stuff, you wouldn't really be able to tell by the way I can function that I had been through something like that, you know, with my neck, as serious as that was. Because basically they disconnected my head and put it back on, is exactly what they did.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it's a very cool if they can do nowadays. You know, I had bilateral knee replacement. I just came off getting my left hip replaced in February. My right hip, I just got clearance. It's good to go for a while. Don't be concerned about it. But I've got to get my right Achilles attended to. It's not, I blew it up almost 2 years ago, October, and it's not right. And I'm fairly confident it's going to have to be made right.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, a matter of what extent, you know, do they have to cut on it to make it right? If they need to cut on it at all, but the way it feels, it would surprise me if they needed to.
When you chat with guys that you spent 23 years with, or sections of 23 years, or a lot of them going through, or others going through stuff like this, just because the massive amount of abuse you guys had to put on yourselves?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's I'm not going to say it's an everyday common thing, but it's pretty standard.
Yeah.
You know, knees, hips, backs, absolutely, is a very grueling environment to survive it for, you know, such a long period of time.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys doing that to yourselves. That's, you know, I'm pretty fortunate to not have had any surgery or, you know, any major injuries.
Well, it's much better. Part of the biggest part of the problem, Mickey, I would say back in the day, and still certainly a psychological aspect of the environment, is, you know, how do you develop the discipline to suck it up and drive on? You know, embrace the suck and do the job. Well, that's all fine and good, but what happens is you've got guys that have legit injuries that suck it up and drive on, don't say anything because you don't want to be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn to deal with it over time. Mm-hmm. Now, for me specifically, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me specifically, looking back on a couple of specific time frames while I was in the service, I was a chronic pain sufferer to the extent that it affected my disposition, just my standard everyday disposition. Of course, now I was wrapped much tighter back in the day than I am now. I've had to learn how to, having, retired in, what was it, June of '03, I've had plenty of time to attempt to assimilate to civilian life, but I still to this day really don't interact with civilians that much, I don't think. I actually have to rethink that because I happen to know a lot of people. But
when you say interact, you just don't, like, your way of thinking just doesn't jive with people that haven't spent a life doing what you're doing.
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Absolutely.
Kind of like somebody that's like a real fanatic for a religion or something. If somebody that's not that same way doesn't really get along with them so well. Like, I like to drink beer and you want to go to church 4 times a week.
Dude, you're testing my skills, man.
I'm just saying, I mean, you're institutionalized to a degree. Everybody you're around, like you called me
right.
to talk before this to have a, go ahead.
Well, it's kind of like this, man. I'm not around the kind of people I'm used to being around, which are people like me. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
If I had to look at it from any one perspective, it would have to be kind of a strategic perspective. In that respect, I don't enjoy the camaraderie, just the hard work, man, the satisfaction of pulling a gig off because everybody applied themselves and it hurt and it took a lot and we did it anyway. You know what I mean? That type of job satisfaction. But I'm just, I'm not around people like me that I'm used to being around. Normally, if I find myself, even my language is so military industrially complex driven. Sometimes I find myself just in a normal conversation having to explain my language to people because I'll digress into military lingo without even thinking it's a big deal or thinking that how could they not understand what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
Well, in addition to your 23 years as a kid, you were raised with a pop that was also
right, exactly.
of that same ilk.
Exactly. And another thing that I'll shed a little light on, this was a realization that I had just recently. Growing up as a military brat, you're subject to the UCMJ by default, just by your, parents being militarily driven. So you're actually brought up under 2 set of standards. You have the civilian, rules, laws, and all that you have to abide by. And the UCMJ, or the Uniform Code of Military Justice, is a much, in a lot of respects, a much stricter code to follow. So, in a sense, if you think about that, being brought up in a very controlled and strict environment, the civilian realm, civilians on average don't have what I would consider, just your average level of expected mental discipline, physical discipline. With a baseline, I guess I need to quantify that. Be self-sufficient, self-sustaining, a contributing member of society.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pretty tall order for a lot of folks.
Yeah. There's a lot of the guys I work with, there's probably a half a dozen Green Berets, and I enjoy working with those guys because I know, for the most part, just because a guy did something once doesn't mean he's always that way. But for the most part, those guys are like, if they say they're going to do something, they do it. And if I know that they're going to be organizing or planning a project or process or event, I don't really have to think about or worry about it. Normally,
You
most
know
of
what's
them
going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they hold themselves to a standard, not just because they know it's the right thing to do, but that's what got them to that echelon of their career, was being that way.
Right.
Not just being a good shooter or being strong or fast.
Well, there's a lot of things that you naturally do and come into contact with that require you to be switched on.
What do you mean by switched on when you say that? People sometimes say that and it means different things.
Okay. I'll just hit some key points of interest. I guess the high points of being switched on. One is going to be based on some very simple constants. One, how old are you? What is your level of emotional maturity? What is your life experience? You understand what I'm saying? What are you bringing to the table? Where is your level of mental awareness? Are you dialed in to?
You broke up.
Taste.
Say that last one again after mental awareness. You broke up on me.
I'm getting a messages. The computer telling me my internet connection is sketchy.
Your neighbor's probably watching some videos.
Who knows, man? Dig it. Back on task. Your level of mental awareness, mental discipline, how in tune are you with your senses? Do you understand to the extent that you're capable of taking advantage of your vision, your hearing, kinesthetic or feelings, as well as, the emotional content of what you find yourself involved in. Weighs heavy, has a heavy influence on your success or failure. You can't separate these things, but how in tune are you with them? Are you capable of using your senses to your advantage? Another simple aspect is how coordinated are you? What is your level of mental and physical coordination? Just as a lighthearted example, can you chew gum and walk at the same time without biting your tongue or tripping? How well do you listen? Are you a good listener? Where are your communication skills? Can you communicate effectively? Do you know what that is? Are you capable of following instructions? What is your level of reading comprehension? You know what I mean? And can you follow instructions? What about sequencing tasks? What is the first thing, and this is a question, dude, I'm going to test your head. What is the importance of a sequence?
What is the importance of a sequence?
Yeah, what is the importance of a sequence? I mean, it's important that, wouldn't you agree, it's important for people to be able to sequence a task?
Sure. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind as I think about that is that it helps direct, the outcome. For example,
it absolutely controls the outcome, dude.
Yeah.
Because the importance of a sequence is the simple fact that it can't be violated. If the sequence is violated, whatever is intended to happen or take place will not. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So how well can you sequence a task?
Yeah.
Um,
Put the drain plug back in before you pour the oil into the top of the crankcase. If you don't
that would
do
be a
that,
good call.
yeah, you're gonna have a puddle on the
Um,
floor.
how well can you multitask? Okay. What is your level of awareness in respect to time, speed, distance? There's many different aspects of timing. You know, what is your sense of timing, or do you even have a sense of timing? The cool thing about all these points of interest is the simple fact that, you know, even though we strive to harness the power of the human mind, it's at this point infinite, and it would take you a month of Sundays just to simply explain how we can sit here and carry on the conversation that we're having, and spell it all out, write it all down.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how many calculations are we making simultaneously? But these are all learned abilities. You can learn. Let's just, for example, because of your background and experience, your environment has never required you to learn the importance of multitasking. So therefore, you can't do it. Doesn't mean you can't learn how to do it. But see, the thing with any performance oriented training, you know, we just happen to be involved in the gun thing. You've got to be able to multitask. But if you have difficulty multitasking, then how are you going to, you know, top your pistol off?
Mm-hmm.
You know, having had, you know, cover, time, and opportunity to top your pistol off, you know, that's a multitasking requirement. Okay, but you can't multitask well. So how long does it take you to, you know, top your pistol off? That's just a simple example.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I key on all of these things throughout a training program. And I came to the stark realization a couple of 3 weeks ago, and I basically wrote it all down and came up with what I refer to as critical thinking and physical abilities or skills and or objectives. They're skills if you possess them, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't possess them, then they're objectives. They're things that you need to understand you don't do well. So therefore, you're going to have to pursue some avenue that will help you dual task. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? You might have to learn how to multitask at the same time you're learning the subject material that you're there to be trained for.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
And in order to do all that, you kind of got to go back to the switched on thing and have enough
Well, the bottom line
self-awareness.
is if you're not switched on, you need to learn how to get that way while you're learning everything else. So you got your work cut out for you. You see what I mean?
I think so,
But
yeah.
here, I'll draw another correlation for you, man. Maybe this will help you. Timing. Timing is huge. Your sense of timing, your level of physical coordination. But what about your level of mental agility? What about your mental capacity for collecting and processing information in respect to all of the various priorities, time, speed, distance issues that are rolled into your decision-making process, and then take action?
Mm-hmm.
Now, based on that explanation, it should be easy to understand. Normally, you make a decision, and a certain amount of time transpires until you complete the action, correct? Or initiate action, even. So dig this. through training and practice, what you should strive to do is decrease the amount of time that transpires between the decision and the action to the extent that the decision is the action. And I refer to that as mental and physical synchronization. You follow me?
I do.
You've trained, you've practiced, you've rehearsed, you know how to perform task X. So when, or in the process of solving a shooting problem, you are confronted with task X. Task X is performed smoothly with positive control instantaneously. You have the thought, you receive the conditioned response. You follow me?
I do.
All right, cool. What else you got?
Have you ever, so you worked for the Army, and after some amount of time, you were running shooting programs for SF, right? You were running the part of the training
I was
program.
plugged in. Yeah, I was early 90s. I want to say 92 to 96 time frame. I was the combat marksmanship non-commissioned officer in charge. The initial 2-week portion of an 8-week program, blah, blah, blah. And I had basically the trust of the command to do what I knew to be necessary to set that mechanism up for success by documenting the way we did business.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I bring that up is when I transferred to that organization, I immediately, within the span of the first week, realized that almost to a man, the entire staff was due to transfer or retire. So I and there really was no, business was being done off of historical fact. There really was no baseline structure in respect to how we did business, standard operating procedures, blah, blah, blah. So I took it upon myself to begin the documentation process of everything we did and why we did it and how we did it. And it took me a little over a year. And of course, all of it had to be hot washed. All of it had to be fed through the chain of command for approval, blah, blah, blah. And it all got hacked off on and put into place. And that was a major coup for me personally. I would say it was probably one of the highlights of my career, having been able to, have that level of influence. That was very cool. But I rotated out, went back to the teams. I was going to retire in, I want to say it was 2000. And the Group Sergeant Major asked me, what, if there was anything that we could do to retain you in the community instead of you retiring, what would that be? And I'm like, well, Sergeant Major, that's real easy. Give me my old job at Range 37 back. And he's like, okay, well, let me look into it. Well, he looked into it and it was made to happen. A few phone calls and a few days later, I was plugged back in. And of course, unbeknownst to us at the time, that was total, we went on a total war preparation footing. So things picked up.
So it was
Things were
like 7 years you were gone from
Pardon me?
that. Was about 7 years then you had left that position before you went
Right.
back?
Yeah. Well, if you say not, if you called it 96 to 2000,
Oh,
4 years.
okay, 4 years.
Yeah.
I thought I heard 93. When you got back, was most of what you had implemented still being used? Did they change
From
much?
a standard operating procedure standpoint, yes. The total framework for the SOPs were intact. What was different was the firearms program itself had deteriorated severely. And that is strictly my opinion, dude.
Mm-hmm.
What and my interpretation, having been plugged back in and taking X amount of time to review what was being done and how it was being done and why it was being done, it was almost as if whoever was in charge at that time was so concerned about attrition and numbers, they were actually teaching the test, so to speak. You understand what I'm saying?
I think so, yeah.
All right,
So
dig it.
so you had to come crack the whip.
Right. Yeah, I had to turn things around, and it was that was difficult. If I had to say any one thing was difficult, uh, getting guys psychologically polarized, um, that's a hat trick for sure. But it's there's so many different mechanisms that go into the play of the problem. Like, look at environmental impact. Um, being on jump status and jumping static, halo ops, um, being a qualified jump master, you have to go through the jump master program. These are all very strenuous, and rightfully so, mental gut checks in respect to your ability to sequence tasks, follow instructions, because you have to do the JMPI, the jump master parachute inspection, for each jumper prior to them loading onto the aircraft, right, and hooking up to stack line. Blah blah blah. Coming back to the example or the analogy for timing, if you want to work, if you're not very physically coordinated, or you just simply want to work on improving your timing, then jump rope, hit a speed bag, learn how to work a speed bag, work a heavy bag, double taps your cardio, and it instills fighting spirit, because you're mimicking the actions of fighting and doing violence when it's appropriate.
Right on.
A lot of things go into, there's not any one thing that is just going to magically switch you on. It is a combination of so many moving parts that, for example, like for an open enrollment class, I can't necessarily control the skill level of the participants, correct? So I have to be prepared. Now, if I can influence it, I will, but I normally never have a choice. But I have to be prepared to satisfy the requirements for all skill levels represented in the crew.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that can be difficult to do sometimes. Some of my best work that I've ever done in an instructor capacity at times has been simply to hold a gig together and make it work and make it be successful because of the broad spectrum of skill represented in the crew.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? Now I'm going to do a lot of my best work, if I had to say or describe my best work, is more along the lines of fighting and tactics. In that respect of doing that type of work or having that kind of focus on your training and practice, the key aspect is you need to be able to shoot. You already need to know that and be able to do it, because when you make that shift, no matter how you look at it, and we'll look at it from a couple different perspectives, but when you make the shift from using firearms for sport or hunting, which is sport, or target shooting or competitive shooting, all that, that's a decision point. If you want to pursue those types of skill and be a marksman, be a competitor, drive on. Okay, there's a lot of parallels in respect to what you do competitively and what you learn competitively that's going to be required of you in a combat setting. Whereas I think where a lot of people skip a beat is the simple fact you don't have to have a lot of skill. Now, killing somebody with a handgun's relatively easy if you're willing to do it. It's not rocket science. But the thing about it is are you psychologically prepared to do that? It doesn't actually matter where your skills are at. And when I say skills, the first thing that immediately comes to mind is how are you quantifying your skill, or how are you quantifying your ability?
As you're saying this, I know more than one USPSA GM whose gun gets unloaded in case to go home. So like there's a
I know competitive shooters that are strictly that.
Yeah.
They're competitive shooters. They don't even carry.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Like that guy has the physical skills to pull the trigger, but he's not mentally or willing to use a firearm as a weapon.
I would describe it as doesn't want to accept the responsibility of lethal force. Being able to defend yourself, being able to defend your loved ones. See, that's the anomaly as far as the gun thing goes, because look at golf. How much time and energy is it going to take for you to become a good golfer, right? And then, you whack somebody in the head with a golf club, they're just as dead as if you shot them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But limited, use. Coming back on point, how, or regardless of your ability level, if you have gone out and done what's required to get a carry permit and you choose to carry, well, you're accepting that responsibility, but at the same time, you're exercising, your God-given right to self-protection.
Mm-hmm.
But how prepared are you to do it and be successful? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Nothing changes the level of responsibility at all. if you are going to make the choice to carry and be armed in the interest of your own self-protection and those of your loved ones, the responsibility is on you to be as prepared as possible in that moment you're faced with violence. You understand where I'm coming from?
I do.
Nothing relieves you of the responsibility of that. And the responsibility is the same. It would be the same if some cat just bought his first pistol and got his first permit and chooses to carry. Well, I choose to carry, but my skill level is certainly well above that individual's, but the responsibility is still the same.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I did there?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing changes the responsibility in respect to wielding the power of life and death. And you better
do you get many
prepared.
You get many people at classes that show up and don't understand that paradigm?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I find myself at times in what I would consider to be a fighting program, having to explain to people, you know, the front and rear sight and how the trigger works. I don't mind doing it. And I see it as an opportunity. Hey, this cat just provided me an opportunity to excel. I'm going to show him what he needs to know and understand in conjunction with that. But see, you're kind of steering me towards another point of interest, man, which is a very good one. Why do people get involved in the gun thing? You know, is it become a grandmaster, competitive shooter, world champion, blah, 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 or is it self-defense, defense of loved ones in your home? All that's fine and good. But it's you have to establish marksmanship ability. Marksmanship equals the ability of an individual to apply the principles of marksmanship to a firearm and produce an acceptable shot group. Okay, you have to be a marksman. You have to know and understand what that is and be able to do it. Now, the better marksman you are, it stands to reason the better combat marksman you could be, right? But let's take a look at combat marksmanship by definition, by S. Dave definition, and see what all's involved compared to marksmanship. Combat marksmanship equals the ability of an individual to deliver fast, accurate, and lethal fire on the enemy without hesitation in adverse conditions within the rules of engagement.
How long ago did you come up with that? I've heard you say that since I've met you. Was that something that you used?
I coined the original definition, I want to say around 92. Well, no, not that early. It would have had to been 94, 95 time frame. But it wasn't, I've only refined it. I haven't changed the structure of it. I would have to dig in some old documents to remember the original legit verbiage. But I only recently modified it, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, whatever. But if you were to break out that definition, you could generate your own mission essential task list, you know, provided you had the ability to break out that definition and focus on all the key aspects of what is being said there. you have to know how to shoot. If you don't know how to shoot, the first step is you must become a marksman. You can develop gunfighting ability right along with your marksmanship ability.
Mm-hmm.
But you shouldn't try to quantify your combat ability with your marksmanship ability. It's not the same thing. You follow me?
I do. What you're saying is just because you're a good marksman doesn't mean you're necessarily a good fighter with the gun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It can get very convoluted very fast. There's, in respect to timing, I think people skip a beat because it's simply difficult to understand the amount of time, energy, and resources that are behind guys like me, Larry Vickers, Kyle Lamb, blah, ad infinitum. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Career soldiers. I think to an extent, the human animal is hypercritical of themselves enough. You know what I mean? But guys, prospective students or entry, intermediate, or advanced level guys, however you want to quantify their ability level, they see guys like us, and rightfully so, they expect us to be able to swing lead. You know what I mean? Cool. I agree with that 100%. For as long as I've been doing this, I better know and understand what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and be good at it. But your average bear, this is the skip a beat part. I think your average bear does the mental comparison too much, and they miss the timeline or what it's taken. I'll just speak for myself. They can't comprehend or grasp the amount of time and energy I've put into my skills that allow me to do the things that I can do. You see what I mean?
Sure.
Because all I get is a 2-day soundbite. I mean, if I sat down and said, okay, I've been doing the shooting thing for 30 years. That's like, how am I going to condense 30 years into a 2-day working time frame?
Right. And that person says, okay, I spent my money, went and hung out 2 whole days doing this. Like,
well,
so much more than most of their friends or coworkers would ever think to do.
You're gonna have a certain amount of that. Yes, true. And you've got to remember the Ken Hackathorn 2% rule, bro.
What is it?
2% of the human population have no business interacting with firearms on any level.
Yeah, I've heard him say that one. That's or driving.
I'm thinking anymore, you could probably up that percentage a little bit, but yeah, some people just don't have what it takes, and there's no other way to say that. Should you happen to encounter someone like that, call it as you see it. I've had to have that conversation twice in my time on the range. Just tell somebody straight, hey, look, dude, I've seen this movie, and straight up, bro, you're dangerous. You're a hazard, not only to yourself, but everyone around you.
What was the look on that guy's face?
What I'm going to ask you to do at this point is unload and clear both weapons, dude. You're done. One dude was like, yeah, man, I got it. You're absolutely correct. The other dude had a little trouble understanding. I need to explain it to him in a little more critical mass detail, but he got it, and he understood once I had broken it down and explained it to him. But here's the cool thing. In my my mind's eye, and in some of these self-imposed think tank things I do, I came to understand that a lot of my best work has not only been done in knowing how to teach other people, the mechanics of shooting, but I was also dual tasked at the time. I was responsible for the cadre, my cadre guys, my fellow instructors that doing the job day in, day out, on the range, sucking it up, driving on, leading by example. A lot of the formulas that I was able to develop over the years were driven by that level of responsibility, not just the level of responsibility I accepted to produce shooters, but maintain the quality and standards of the cadre themselves. You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah. How often were you guys training together where you were not training your students, your soldiers that were coming through?
Right. We had any amount of time, energy, and resources to basically train whenever we wanted, provided our schedule allowed it. But we did once a year get a 2-week block to do a flyaway, a drive away, whatever,
Go
cadre
really
development stuff.
Tune it up. Yeah.
Right. It was very interesting. I enjoyed it. Had a blast. Never thought that I would wind up basically doing it for a living. I was kind of forced into that by my neck blowout. After one aspect we didn't discuss earlier was, and actually turns out to be the most critical one, I couldn't get picked back up in the security realm because basically nobody was going to tell me at the time, but I was a health risk because of the extent of the surgery I had on my neck. Wasn't no company going to touch me with a 10-foot pole out of medical liability stuff, which is understandable. But I wish, I had a very good friend of mine, as a matter of fact, explain it to me one day, because I was turned down by the mechanism that he belonged to, and it just blew my mind because there was absolutely, on the surface of things, no reason. I mean, they could have hit me with "you're overqualified," and that wouldn't have worked. You know what I mean? But it was because of my neck. It was game over for me, and that was a very stark realization the day that happened.
Yeah, that'd be heavy.
I was not digging on it, but I decided, hey, I'll just do what I do best and go into the training business, see what happens. And here we are.
Any idea how many people you've taught in the last 20 years?
No, I wouldn't even hazard a guess. But then there's the question of how many, not only have I trained personally, but how many people have I had a positive influence on in the realm?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Quite a few, I would like to think.
You hear
Quite
from
a few.
guys? You hear from guys ever?
Periodically, I hear from dudes in group. I used to I mean, my peer group has probably retired out by now. But yeah, I used to get pinged every now and again from a dude. Hey man, you know, this so and so, I did class whatever. I appreciate you scoring me away. You hooked me up solid. It worked out good for me.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
hey, dude, you know, that's job satisfaction right there.
I like it. What do you got on the horizon? You got the, after the surgery's done, you're going to get back moving.
I have no choice, man. I'm definitely, I'm trying to, you know, survive the zombie virus gig right along with, you know, a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Things are definitely tightening up, but I'm working on some, you know, I'm making some moves. I'm my own worst enemy as it comes, or when it comes to self-promotion.
Why do you think
I've
you don't?
never cracked the code on that.
As to how to do it or why you don't pursue it?
Why I don't pursue it. I mean, you know, if I thought it was, I don't know, man, it's kind of difficult to discuss because I didn't come up in that realm of self-promotion, me,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a gig mindset. It was the team, you know, the mission was what was important. You know, we'll roll in hot, take care of the gig, roll out the back, let you take the credit, and we're good.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, you know, I don't even have a lot of pictures. I was always real hinky about, you know, taking pictures of stuff, location, training, what we were doing, how we were doing it, you know, out of concern for, you know, giving up TTPs or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Seems like a little bit different world now because there's millions of pictures of super
oh yeah,
soldiers. You know?
there's no, yeah, it's all out there pretty much now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool.
Just wasn't your thing. So if somebody was watching this and they're like, hey, I want to set up a training class with this dude, how do I get a hold of him? How do they get a hold of him?
Best way to do it would be to shoot me an email at superdaveharrington@gmail.com.
What do you need for a basic class structure? Of course, you got to have a range. Like just if somebody's listening, if a lot of instructors listen to this and people that train, like what's like some basic requirements that you have to have
Basically,
to do a gig?
it's actually real easy. You know, if anybody out there is interested in contacting me to set up a training gig, just shoot me an email and I'll get the ball rolling. Hosting me is actually a very easy thing to do. I'm self-sustaining. The gig pays for itself. I can walk you through the coordinations. I've got my own system, you know, how it works, and it works extremely well. What I have been working on, with, you know, you asked me in respect to, you know, what do I have coming up or what do I have going on? I have agreed to be the host of Trigger Time TV for the 2021 season.
Cool, man.
I'm pretty stoked about that. I had a pretty good idea, man. You want to hear it?
Let's hear it.
All right, dig this, man. We're probably October, November timeframe. We've got to set up the filming for the season, right? Already know what my schedule is. I have 14 4.5 minutes segments that I'm responsible for. So I got to thinking, how can I best take advantage of that kind of time? You know what I mean? So I kind of sat down and it hit me. I came up with like a by name list of, people that I know personally, friends of mine, but are also professional associates. And the majority of them are icons in the firearms industry. I'll give you a few
Sure, you
examples.
named a few like Larry and Ken.
Well, Larry, Kyle, Ken, Bill Rogers, Bill Wilson, Rob Haught, Ernie Langdon, Kyle DeFore. There's some other dudes plugged in, Bill Rogers, Kelly Venden. Well, my idea or the concept is, since I'm going to host the show, what I asked each one of these individuals to do, first of all, I wanted to make sure they'd be on board with the idea, and basically told them flat out, this is the concept. I would like each one of you to provide me with your favorite firing exercise, or one of your best go-to firing exercises for whatever reason. I mean, it can be for testing, it can be for practice, it can be a training drill, whatever. Nothing elaborate. I've got to be able to film it within a 4.5 minute segment. But then I'm going to organize everybody by alphabetical, in an alphabetical manner. And then I'm going to explain and demonstrate, for example, I think Kyle would come up first. Do the showpiece, and this firing exercise is Kyle Lamb's go-to firing exercise for this reason. Here's the setup, show the action and the reset, and demo it. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, I like it.
Kind of share, I don't know, dude, share the spotlight, so to speak. But it ought to be entertaining. That was my goal in the first place.
That's cool.
It should be entertaining, and what I hope happens is the firing exercise itself is their first takeaway from that show. You see what I mean?
Yeah, that should be great.
But everybody, I've heard back. I just fired that email out this morning. I've heard back from about half of everybody. Everybody really likes the idea, is on board with it. I've already received exercises, materials.
Awesome.
And the onus is on me to, I've got to know the exercises. I have to absolutely be familiar with them and know them. And I'm going to have to fire them and rehearse them in order to explain and demonstrate them on Trigger Time TV.
So now your summer's cut out for you.
Oh yeah, dude, I'll be busy right up until the point we film it. Absolutely.
Heading to the range and shooting those. That's cool. I dig it, man. I talked to you quite a bit recently. You didn't share that with me, so that's a good surprise. I'm glad to hear you got that going.
Well, that just happened this morning, bro.
Oh, okay.
I'm not kidding. I just gen that email up. I had the idea last night because I couldn't sleep, so I pounded out the email this morning and fired it off.
It's a good idea. I think it's not only is it sharing some spotlight, like you said, but you're also sharing tons of valuable knowledge with all the viewers.
dude. And it's from kind of a who's who in the industry list of dudes.
Yeah.
You know
Everybody
what I
you
mean?
said, everybody you
How can you
said
go
is,
wrong with that?
yeah, world-class people. I dig it.
So I'm excited about it, dude. I'm like stoked to see how it's going to go.
Yeah. When will that go out then? That'll go.
I have no idea, dude. I'm going Sunday, this coming Sunday. I'm going to drive over to Pascagoula, link up with Troy Gillette, and or Gillette. I can't remember how he likes his last name pronounced. But Troy, anyway, I'm going to link up. We're going to do a little film project thing I've got going. Cover down on a couple of things. Then I'm going to go on over and visit with my parents for a week and then come on back.
Nice.
And I've got to get an MRI on my Achilles. Got to get that hammered out in the background. And I still have to, work. So that's not a big deal. Things are going. They're going. I don't know where they're going right now, but
you're driving on.
I've got several fingers in the fires. So we'll see which one gets burned the worst. You know what I mean?
I do.
Bound to happen.
It is. I appreciate you taking the time to talk. Again, your email for folks if they want to connect is what?
Super Dave Harrington @gmail.com. All lowercase, no periods, no nothing. And it's HARRINGTON. Super Dave Harrington @gmail.com. Now, I do have a website, combatspeed.com, but it's not right. I did turn it on. It's very basic. And I'm having that addressed basically as we speak. So my website should be able to represent here in short order.
Well, if somebody wanted to go to the website, they could at least read a little bit about you. And
yeah, true.
Yeah.
But then again, and then there's, Facebook, Dave Harrington on Facebook. Not a big deal.
But it's a means of comms. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
Correct.
Well, I appreciate you. Selfless promotion. These podcasts are brought by Gunfighter Gun Oil, which you've been using and you said you dig, which I like.
Yes, absolutely, dude. I agree with you, man. It's a good product. I like the way it performs. But what I like about it the most is it stays in the guns when the guns are hot.
Mm-hmm.
If you do, I don't know how to describe it, sustained firing exercises, combat related sustained firing exercises where the guns get hot, you'll know what I'm talking about in respect to the oil staying in the gun. But it's hadn't let me down yet. Don't expect it to.
Nope, it won't. I appreciate you, man. I'm glad to hear you got some good stuff coming up. Appreciate your time. We'll pump this out, drive you to some more people. You guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, share it on your Facebook, share it on your social media, whatever platforms you use, and let Dave pass the story on and his wisdom to more people. I probably talk less on this podcast than a long one. I was just enjoying listening. So I appreciate you, brother.
Very cool, man. No worries. I appreciate it. Give me something hard to do next time.
Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S.,
Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com.